I've written down that I'm going to talk about paralogical perception. It's a science and non-duality conference. I get to speak at a lot of flaky places. Science and non-duality. You know, so whenever I say I'm going to speak at the science and non-duality conference, I get people I tell it to, they split into two groups. There's the nerds on this side that go, yeah, that sounds great. And there's everyone else who goes, my God, that sounds awfully boring. So here I am amongst people who, like me, think that sounds really interesting. Fantastic. So I wanted to do something which could honor that level of inquiry. So my real passion, I need to say that up front, is really with waking up to the mystery and dissolving into the oneness and the love. That's what I do with people. That's what I really write about centrally. My passion is to get people together for periods where we can feel that, arrive right into that love so deep it kind of... And I'm showing a film which was going to be shown before this, and it's going to be shown tomorrow. 5 minutes long. If you get the chance to see it, I'd love you to, because I'm really pleased with it as a way of conveying that. But when Maurizio said, why don't you play it before you speak? I said, no, if I do that, we'll just dissolve into that, and I won't be able to say anything. And I really want to say something here. And when I came to write down what I wanted to say, it was like, yes, that's it. And then being here with you all, I've tried to feel out how to say it in a way that can be most valuable. You know, I feel honored to be with you. I feel doubly honored to be on the stage with you, looking at me and bothering to listen to what I have to say for 45 minutes. And I want to try and convey, therefore, in that 45 minutes, the thing which feels most valuable in this community to me, so that you can take it home with you, turn it upside down, throw it away, or keep it close, depending on which you find is best. And that is something which I've given a name to. I've been developing it for many, many, many years now and writing about it. And in my last book, The Mystery Experience, I gave it a name. I called it paralogical thinking or paralogical perception, which is kind of a fancy name. It had to be called something. And it's a very old idea in a new form. And the old idea in a new form is simply this, that this experience we're having right now is fundamentally paradoxical. At its root, it is paradoxical. Or perhaps another more accurate way to say it is what's happening right now is an absolute mystery. But anything which we bring to it to understand it comes through the vortex of language, which will turn it into something paradoxical. And the closer you get to the thing itself, the more you will find paradoxes, until when you go really deep, you will find the opposites sitting side by side. Which means you need to look at it from opposite directions at once if you want to know what it is. Now, I'm not a physicist, I don't pretend to be, but I do love it. And one of my great heroes is Niels Bohr. Because Niels Bohr, unbeknown to me until I discovered it relatively recently, had developed all these ideas way before me, as have many people. He was the guy who came up, who looked at the famous double slit experiment, and was faced with this wave-particle quandary, which you all know about, and came up with the idea, the breathtaking idea of complementarity. That actually we were looking so deep that at that level you had to go, it is both a wave and a particle, depending on how you look at it. At that level, it is not either or, it is both and, depending on how you look at it. A breathtaking idea. Actually, it's been around since ancient China and way beyond, in the West also. Think of the yin-yang sign, that's it. That when you get close to the Tao, to the mystery, there's a fundamental polarity, and they exist inside each other, such that you can't say it's this or that, it's both this and that, at the same time. Does that make sense? Not really, not logically. So we need a new way of thinking, paralogically. Now, logical thinking's fantastic. I love it. I'm a philosopher. I wish we'd all be far more logical than we are here. But when we come down to the depths, we find the opposites sit side by side. So Niels Bohr put it like this. He said, the opposite of a trivial truth is false. But the opposite of a deep truth is also true. And when in his life, I love this story just because it's kind of bonkers, this Nobel Prize winning physicist, when he got awarded by the Danish king, I guess, something called the Order of the Elephant, for which you had to have a coat of arms. And this, perhaps one of the greatest physicists of the modern age, put on that coat of arms a yin-yang symbol, which if you look at it on its side is a wave and two particles. Weird, huh? Fun. He put a yin-yang symbol, and underneath in Latin he said, the opposites coexist. That was it for him. Now, he didn't mean that just for down here. He began to feel that was a key for everywhere. And that's what I want to share with you here. Now, I haven't come to this through Niels Bohr. I'm just bringing him in because I'm talking to some scientists and I want to try and steal some of his credibility. What I've come to it from is by looking myself. My journey has been within, as a philosopher, as a writer, and most of all, just as a confused human being, experiencing this. And desperately wanting to know what it is, what I can do with it, what I should do with it, why there's suffering in it. And finding that as I do that, I can enter these other states of consciousness. There's not just one state, there's many states. And most importantly, there's this state which I now call being deep awake. Or here, we're talking about it often as being non-dual. But I think to really understand that, and indeed to experience it, we need to understand it paralogically, ironically, because it's a paradox. And this paralogical philosophy, which I hope to unwind for you here, can really help us enter those states. That's my main interest personally. So if you look right now, you'll see another paradox, which isn't all down there in waves and particles, but it's kind of the same, which is that right now, if I start from, here's the mystery, what am I experiencing? Well, there is this experience happening, whatever it is. And the first paradox I notice about it, and I'm guessing this is the same for you, is that I'm experiencing something objective and something subjective. The reality of being is arising as something objective and subjective. And the objective is here, and I see you, and I touch this, and we're sharing this. But actually, all the action's taking place somewhere else. You are all very politely sitting very still. I'm doing my funny thing that I have to do. And the action is taking place in the psyche, or what used to be called the soul. Psyche just means soul. And that doesn't exist in space. Not objective space, it's subjective space. Or indeed objective time, which is why things can go very fast for someone and very slow for someone else, even while objectively it's the same for both of you. And you're experiencing that right now. But I can't see it, I can't hear it, I can't touch it, but you can. You are individual in that sense. And it's obvious, you can't escape it. What is it? Where is it? We don't know. We just see it every day and just take it for granted. There it is. So there are two ways that we can explore this experience, this mystery. Subjectively and objectively. And what I love about science, because I haven't done that, is that these guys have gone objectively. They've gone outwards. What is this stuff? It's been an objective inquiry. What I love about the mystics, what attracted me to the route I've taken in life, was to go inwards. What am I? Who's looking here? So you've got a paralogical relationship here. One going out objectively, one going in subjectively. Because they seem like opposites, most of other history since the development of science has been to see them as in complete and absolute opposition. People here won't see it like that, but you know that the rest of the culture does. And historically it has, for all sorts of good reasons. But if we look at it paralogically, if we expect these opposites to coexist, and if we know we have to look at something from two completely opposite perspectives to see what it actually is, and hold them both, not either this or this, but both this and this, then these two fit together perfectly. And suddenly you kind of reach this place which John was trying to explore in his way, which is, look, if you go out far enough, you start with, I'm this, and then it all dissolves and none of this is here. Far out. You know, people say these things, and I just think, wow, this is empty space. Meeting empty space, how can that be? And then you go down through and we find this quantum world, which everyone's been talking about, which is really information, isn't it? It's like maths, it's information. The actual is coexistent with the information field. And then there's the mystery of being. And what is that? It's the mystery of being. It's just what it is. We don't know what it is. But that's the base. That's what happens if you look outwards. Now what happens if you look inwards? For me, it's exactly the same, but in a different way. So I go in, and there's this other world. Here's the world where I'm a body, I'm a thing, but then I go back, and there's a world of what? Possibilities, information, something which has no form like this does, but it's coexistent with it. And then right behind that, what we used to be called in the old days spirit, or essence, or being, these mean the same thing, there's the unified field. Now, if you look at the unified field objectively, which is what most scientists do, not all, but most, because they're looking outwards, you will end up saying things like there's a field of energy, or there's something, there's a fundamental objectivity which is arising as this. And if you look at it subjectively, like non-dualists do, and the sages in the East have done, and then you will end up saying things like, there's a unified field, and it's like a giant awareness. It's subjective. It's big mind, as the Zen people say. What I want to suggest is they are both true, because it's not either or, it's both and. But to describe this paradox, this hall of mirrors which we are necessarily in, we need to get to the point where that paradox is not the problem, it's the solution. Yeah, got it. Looked at one way, it's objective, an objective field. Looked at another way, it's a subjective field. Now, the whole of philosophy that I studied is fundamentally an argument between which of those is correct. In one form or another, it's either materialist, in one form or another, subtle forms, or it's idealist, spiritual, this one. The ground is not matter, it's not objective, the ground is subjective. No, the ground is subjective, it's not objective. What if the ground is a mystery and it's arising as subjective and objective? And if you look at it objectively, you'll go, it's an object. And if you look at it subjectively, you'll go, it's a subject. Which is true? They're both true. It's not either or, it's both and, once you get down to that level. Now, I want to explore with you what it's like to see this through that lens. But before I do that, I want to share one more kind of intellectual thing. And it's a kind of a criticism. I want to be critical of a form of science and then a form of non-duality. And I feel confident to do it because I feel things are moving, and I think there's a resonance which I can maybe get away with it without upsetting too many people, I hope. So within this audience, I'm going to say the thing that I think everyone's going to go, yeah, to, I'm hoping, which is one of the errors that gets made in science, which is an either-or error, non-paralogical thinking, is called reductionism. Now, in philosophy, I think reductionism has been utterly discredited, but in the popular mind, amongst many scientists who are working today and people I meet, there is an implicit reductionism. They don't maybe even think about it. And reductionism basically goes, look, this body is made up of molecules, made up of atoms, made up of quantum possibilities. That's what there really is. This is not what there really is. That's what there really is. It's just atoms. That's reductionism. We've got this. We've set out to explain it. We've gone into it, found out what it's made of, all these tiny little things. We've cut it up and cut it up and cut it up and cut it up until it's all very, 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 very small and gone. It's just atoms or empty space or something. It's just this. There's a lovely line from Albert Einstein, which I love, where one day he said to somebody, no, no, no. You cannot say that falling in love is just chemicals in your body. That will not do. And what he was railing against was reductionism. You're not really in love, it's just chemicals in your body. It's just that. And that word, it's just. If you hear it's just, you can bet your bottom dollar it's either or reductionism. Because it is that, but it's not just that. Love, which is also chemicals in your body. Interesting. Also atoms, interesting. Also void arising as something, interesting. It's all of those things. But one's not the real one. It's all of them. Now, with that sort of reductionism, which most people here, I'm sure, will have thought that thought before and not think like that, you end up in this crazy situation where human beings started out to understand their human experience and ended up reducing it to something meaningless. And this is where, in the world today, we get a very nihilistic culture, very consumeristic culture, because basically, the ethos, which is unspoken, is this reductionist, objectivist worldview. Really, this is a random process generated by a mechanical bing, bing, bing of billiard boards doing their thing, a load of monkeys on a rock spinning through space in an infinite universe in which you're going to live for a brief moment, go, what the hell's going on, and die. That's what that leads to. But none of that's true. That's an interpretation. That's all it is. Now, that's what happens when we reduce things to the object. What concerns me about a particular approach to non-duality, which I think is now becoming unfashionable, but was incredibly fashionable a little while back, is it is also reductionist, but in the opposite direction. Just like the material objectivist reductionists reduce it to just this, all these tiny little bits of something, there is a way of, and I've been guilty of this myself many years ago, this is why I'm critical of it, because I've been down that road, is that you can end up coming back into this unified field, which is a real experience, and one which we must all experience because it's so beautiful, and let's do it together. But what happens is that's what's real. So there is a state, without doubt. It's accessible actually right now quite easily. I will try and point out why in a minute. In which you can see, look, this is all one. It really is all one. There is no separation between anything. But that shouldn't lead to the reductionism, just like it is all atoms. But it's not just atoms. And it is all one. But it's not just all one. It is also all many. But what happens when we reduce it is we get this thing where we go, you're not really doing that. You don't really even exist. There is no separateness. I remember last year when I was trying to say a bit of this, someone said, but Tim, there is no separateness. And my reply, which I'll do for you now just because it might work again, was to say, look, I'm going to think a thought. Okay, here I go. Ready? You don't know if I thought a thought. You don't know what it was. Maybe I didn't think anything. Who knows? But you don't know what it is. Why? Because there's separateness, for Jesus Christ. Get used to it. You know, it's like there is separateness. How can you miss that? It's indisputably true. But there is also oneness. Not instead, but as well. Now, when you end up in a position where you're saying absurd things, you know you've entered a theology. You have lost touch with where you started, which was, how can we explain this? And ended up with a story. And it's an either-or story. You found this, and therefore you've gone, well, this must be unreal then. Why? What's any more unreal about this than this? Why is the separateness unreal, but the oneness real? Why are the atoms real, but this level is unreal? Why? Isn't it all real? And to describe the reality of it, don't we need to see it from opposite perspectives? And don't we need to stop? Perhaps, I want to offer you this possibility, stop this either-or. It's either one or it's many. And just look and go, oh my God, it's one and many. How can it be one and many? I don't know, but it is. How can it be subject and object and be all one? I don't know, but it is. It's the Tao and the yin and yang, and they're inside each other. You can see that with, like the objective and subjective views. If you go right out into the object, you end up like the quantum physicists going, oh, but hang on, it's only working while there's someone to look at it. Right in the center, there's a subject. And if you go right back into the subject and go, look, it's all consciousness, until someone hits you on the head and you go unconscious. Well, how come? It can't be all consciousness, can it? And we end up with these absurdities. So here, with the time I have, let me offer you a possibility that what we need to do is think in a new way, a both and rather than an either or way, which enables us to acknowledge both these aspects of reality. And then waking up to oneness becomes really so much easier. Because the reason most of us do not experience the fundamental oneness which is there staring us in the face is because we're convinced it's either or. So, while I was stuck in that, it was like, well, I can experience the oneness, but I've got to get rid of Tim. And if I stare at white walls long enough, and I did, and do all that stuff, then eventually there'll be this moment, and Tim will go, and hurrah, and then, but the bastard wouldn't go. He was just there. He'd just come back, and there he was, and get rid of Tim. No, here he is. But it's not like that now. What I feel like I see now is much more interesting to me, which is that my identity is both this and this. And the metaphor, which helps me, and it may help you, is a very ancient metaphor, which you hear in every tradition which I've written books on. Someone says it, so I can't claim it. Which is that this is like a dream. Now, I'm talking now from the spiritual subjective, right? There's two ways of looking at it. It's like a dream. In this way, it's not a dream, but it's like one in certain respects, important respects. If you think about dreaming, I think you can see immediately that your identity in a dream is a paradox. It's paralogical. Because when you dream, on the one hand, you are one character in your dream, going about your dream business and whatever it happens to be. It's in a world that can seem very real, sometimes terrifyingly real, or erotically real, or God knows what. That's all happening. And you're this, and you're looking out from your dream eyes in your dream world, going about your dream business with a lot of other dream people, except you don't know any of that. But when you look from when you wake up, or if you dream consciously, you dream lucidly, you see, oh, look, I am that, but I am also the dreamer. I am also the awareness within which the whole dream is arising. I am both in the dream as this, and the dream is in me. Which is true? They're both true, depending on how you look at it. Here, I'm in the dream. Here, the dream is in me. Here, I'm one of the characters in the dream. Here, it's all me. It's all one. There is no me, really. It's all one. It's a bit like the particle and the wave. Which is it? It's both of those. So have a look right now. Have a look at this moment right now with me. Here's your objectivity. This is the bit we get to touch and listen to and wave at. But what you're connecting with, and what I'm connecting with, isn't just that. It is that, and that's beautiful. Bodies are great. But what you're connecting with when you look in my eyes or you hear my words is something you can't see or hear. You're connecting with conscious being. I'm conscious being connecting with conscious being. Well, where is that? Well, it's not in space, is it? It really isn't in space. So you can't find it. If I had a big zip in my bald head and unzipped it and said, "Excuse me, sir, would you pull out my conscious being for me?" you'd just get a load of porridge. Important porridge. If you did actually do that to my head, you wouldn't find, I would not be here. Well, I wouldn't be here. But the conscious being's not in there because it doesn't appear in space. It has no form. But so where is it? Well, what about it's everywhere? If you were in a dream, where's the dreamer? It's everywhere. Now, because you're experiencing the dream by dreaming yourself to be one person in the dream, you don't experience that. Not normally. If you dream lucidly, though, you're in this both and place. Whoa, I'm in it, it's in me. The awakening I'm interested in, it may not be whatever other people are talking about. I don't know. I'm no longer attracted by that personally. It may be for you. I don't know. I'm interested that they're doing it, but for me, what I've become interested in is this. This moment, just as it is, but with this both-and awareness, this lucid living, like lucid dreaming. I'm the whole thing appearing as Tim, meeting the whole thing appearing as you. Far out. And the reason that's so important to me is because when I go deeply into that state, there is this love. This big love, this deep love, this all-embracing love. Because the way it seems to me is that love is how oneness feels. You know, when you think of someone you love, like my mind immediately goes to my little girl. She's not so little anymore, but she's still my little girl. And I love her. And what that means for me is that she's separate, increasingly so, but she's also not separate. We're separate and not separate. And the experience of being separate and not separate is love. Connection. What if we're not separate or not separate from everyone? And I think that is what this awakening leads to. Not to disappearing up the mountain, but actually coming back into the dream of life with love. So that we can meet each other as all that we are. And what that means for me now is not what I thought it meant when I started off on this journey when I was in my teens. Then I thought if I just carried on long enough and listened to these masters long enough and maybe changed my name, you know, Freke's already weird, but Frekenanda perhaps. Then I would kind of turn into some sort of Uber Tim. And I'd be, Tim would disappear. I don't know what that would mean, but he would. And there'd be just like, da-da, and I'd be, da-da, and you'd meet me, and it'd be like, ooh, I met Uber Tim. And I'd go, hello. And it could be like, shh, or something. None of that's happened, as you can see. But what has happened, has really excited me, even though it's not remotely that, is that Tim has remained resolutely Tim. But, or as well, both and, this is here. And I'm in this paradox. I'm in a paradox where on the one hand, I'm this transitory, fragile, vulnerable human being who I'm hoping is good value for 45 minutes, but 24/7, I tell you, he can be a pain in the ass. It's Tim. He's formed by all the limits he's experienced, all the experiences he's been privy to. And there's this essence of being, which is my own deep self, which is also the deep self of everyone. It's the dreamer of the dream of life. And there I'm completely safe, because not in the dream. Completely safe. Here, there are no attachments to anything. It just is what it is, and I love it. Here, I can be Tim, and he's got attachments. He's a human being. You know, some things are scary. When people say to me, I have no fear, I go, geez, you can't have been paying attention. Because there's scary shit out there. Bad things happen to good people every day. And what I've realized is that that attachment and all of those human qualities, which I thought I had to get rid of to have this, it's the opposite. The more I allow them and actually be human, be what I just am, the more obvious that I am also this, which is the opposite. And so that I no longer seek to be superhuman, but rather to aspire to actually be human. So, for instance, I very nearly didn't come to the conference because my mum has just got cancer for the 4th time. I love my mum. That hurts me. I'm worried about it. I'm attached to her. And I want to feel like that. When my dad died a few years ago, and he was lying in his bed, and he had a stroke, and he was just able to move one arm and go, help, help. I did not want to be sitting by his bedside with no attachments, in the void, going, it's just karma, Dad, or if only you meditated like I told you. I've transcended this. It's illusion. No, I didn't want that. I realized that was a big thing. I realized I wanted my heart to break because that was my dad. But I didn't want my heart just to break because that would have been destroying me. What I wanted was to be in the paradox which seems to be staring me in the face every moment, which is here, everything is what it is, and it's just perfect, actually. And here, sometimes it's really not. Because this is a journey in duality, and this is not. This is one. And through the journey in duality, which I'm now willing to engage with and make, I expect to be lifted up and thrown down and thrown sideways and turned around. And through that process, for something to happen, to be transformed. And what I see with this lucid awakening is that rather than taking all the suffering away, it actually makes it bittersweet, because it's both. And in that moment with my dad, which was so bitter, it was, surprisingly, also sweet. And through that suffering, we connected in ways we hadn't done for years. And it became strangely poignant and beautiful. And yet I still would have done anything to have changed it. So what I want to leave you with is this possibility that we don't have to choose either or. You don't have to choose between your human self, to being a self at all, and non-duality. They coexist. In fact, the more you allow your humanity, the more you just go, hey, I'm this. In my experience, the people I work with wake up to this really easily and feel the love which unites the two. The reductionism of scientific objectivism or non-dual reductionism, you don't really exist, you have no free choice, all of your humanity is really an aberration, it's just your ego speaking, and if you resist my words, that's a surefire sign that it's your ego speaking. All of that is literally soul destroying. It will destroy your soul, which is why we hate the objectivism of science, and it's why I'm not happy with the reductionism of non-duality. Because in between those poles, the dance which is happening is the dance of soul, where you are both one, the one, and a one. And the journey we've been on, allegedly, I'm told, for 13.5 billion years, to get to you now, and us, and me, this, is not a mistake. Your ego, which you've created through decades of being an adult, is not a mistake. Your mind, which functions so exquisitely, but sometimes drives you nuts, is not a mistake. There's no enemy inside you have to kill, get rid of, transcend, or erase, or see was never there. Rather, what we need to do in every situation is when we find one truth, find the other one, which is its paralogical complementary. Here we are many, here we are one. Which is it? Both. Both at the same time. Here we are these tender, vulnerable human beings. Here we have no form, it's all potential, and it's completely safe. Rooted in this, we can dare to make the journey of life. Not to escape it, but to truly engage with it. Fully, and to bring love into it. Thank you for listening to me.